podcast with Double L. I'm your host, Double L. Today we have a great episode. But before that, I want to just do a quick recap of what we did last week. We talked about men and why we don't seek mentorship, how the facets of society, tradition, culture, pride stop us from just seeking the help that we truly need. So definitely give it a look. Give me some feedback on last week's episode. I really would appreciate it because it helps me grow and helps me prepare better content for you guys. But today's episode is actually talking about education and how it has changed over the last two generations from when we went to school till where my kids currently go to school. Kindergarten is not kindergarten anymore. So today I have Mr. Eric Taylor. He's actually a principal here in Wake County. So we're just going to have him on the show, ask some questions, get an understanding, get some practical tips for us parents. Because if education has changed for our kids, how we approach and help our kids needs to change too, so we can help them succeed. So stay tuned. And as always, please drop a follow, send feedback. I am looking for it, guys. Your feedback definitely helps me become a better content creator and lets me know that I'm on the right path and that you guys are enjoying this. So, as always, here's another episode of the Cuzzo Podcast with Mr. Taylor, the then versus the now. Stay tuned. Mr. Taylor, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. Another beautiful Sunday here, so looking forward to a little bit of rest before the week starts for sure. So
Yeah, no doubt. My Rockets play being a Houston Texan boy. My Rockets play about 8:30 tonight. We're gonna see if we can, you know, shock the world.
knock down Stephen Curry. I guess. Are y'all playing right? Y'all playing the Golden State, right?
Yeah, man, it's gonna be tough.
Yeah.
Think we got a good coach. I think we're gonna do it.
Okay. Okay. Well, this is the first. And I haven't talked sports on the podcast yet, but here we are. Actually, I do have some topics about sports that I eventually want to get into, especially like with the college football and like the whole the players being paid now. That stuff. I've been seeing some kind of off the wall stuff with that. Players not wanting to go to schools because they're not being offered the right amount of money and all this. And I'm like, man, it used to be I just need a free ride. Now it's I need 4 million.
Well, having a 16-year-old myself
Yeah.
right now, I'm pretty excited about the opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
My son right now he plays baseball, and right now he's at a camp right now.
Yeah.
So as a parent with a youngster, boy or girl, a lot of opportunities out here if you play sports.
Oh yeah.
Um, it's an interesting time. It's an exciting time, but you got
Right.
to put in work.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That's why like I don't really have any kind of like I don't hold any kind of resentment or any not resentment, but maybe like I don't look down on people that go the professional route because it's people see 5 minutes of fame on their short career in college and then they get into the pros, but you're talking a lifetime of training, of working hard, of doing all these hours. All the greats had the same mindset. They're when the friends are hanging out, they're not hanging out. They're working hard. So definitely props to all those. Soccer is actually that was my dream when I was a kid, was to play professional soccer. I always wanted to play for a national team. So that was my big dream. Unfortunately, I didn't pursue it like I should have, but you live and you learn. So
Yeah, and there's just so many more opportunities now with having our own league here in the States and being able to play overseas where we know it's probably the number one sport. It's still different from when we were kids. So an ever-changing society that we're living in for sure.
yeah. So let me, I guess, a little bit of a family background. So you just have the one son, or can you give us a little bit of that information?
I actually have a 10th grade son and my daughter's in the ninth grade. So I'm kind of finishing up the high school journey and embarking on that college journey. I mean, fast. These years have flown by.
Yeah.
So I actually got into elementary education when my
Okay.
son was diagnosed with autism at 2.5. So
Okay.
kinda how I got into elementary education. It's just stuck
Yeah.
with, with me and what I do.
Okay. Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. So 2 kids, been how long have you been in education overall?
So this will be my 23rd year. Now my 23rd, 2021 here in North Carolina.
Okay.
Pretty unique story. 21 years in administration. I've actually been an assistant principal and or principal for 21 years.
Okay.
Yeah, pretty unique opportunity for me, and gonna try to finish this thing up strong.
Yeah, well, yeah, 20 plus years in any field is a long journey and so much knowledge over those 20 years for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, things are ever change, just like in the society around sports. Same way in education, changing. And if you are going to be adaptable to the changes, if you're going to be able to adjust, be flexible, build your knowledge and skills, that's what it's going to take
Right,
to
right.
continue with. I think anything. I mean, around COVID, so many things changed, even around the COVID, within
Mhm.
every profession. Right? You just have to be flexible and be able to move with it. So I think I've been good at that.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, it was actually one of the discussion points I wanted to talk about is how technology has changed
Yeah.
how kids interact, with schoolwork and stuff. When I was a kid, it was always textbook, workbook. You had to push the little cart into the classroom to get the laptop, or you had to go to computer class or light spin class or whatever the school would call it. You know, I guess since I guess this shorter time frame since COVID, how has that changed for students with the technology?
Well, really, we're it's the end of the year. Many schools, I know, definitely in North Carolina, are taking end of grade tests. I remember when we were in school, we took a paper and pencil test. Have your pencil, bubble in the circles. We don't need paper anymore. Right now, every kid is taking the test, on the computer, on their personalized laptop. That
Yeah.
every student one-to-one technology since COVID.
Mhm.
Instruction has changed. You know how we're doing podcasts, and
Yeah.
you can do a meeting anywhere, and our students in our classrooms are no different. They're able to create. They're doing a lot of creation on their computers, a lot of presentation opportunities to be presented around what they're creating on their technology. And we're not just talking about in high school. We're talking about elementary. Let me tell you, you give a kindergartner a computer, and to navigate that computer and create and build with that. And we know just from many of our children working on their iPads or their tablets,
Mhm.
what they can do with those. They're doing the same thing with their Chromebooks, with their personalized computers. And, they're able to navigate math, reading, science, STEM, and technology. And so I think our kids are getting smarter. If you ask me, they're definitely getting smarter. I believe they're 5 to 10 times more advanced than we were at their age, if not more, based on the amount of information that they can take in, the amount of work product that they're producing at this time. It's pretty amazing. I mean, I can say that, where our kids are moving into middle and high school or even moving into college, I think is definitely expedient compared to where we were.
Mm. So has there been, and I guess the only experience I have with a kid in school is Ava, right? So it's just kindergarten. And I noticed that is the shift going away from just memorization to more like we want to make sure that they're honing in and understanding this stuff. Is that kind of where we are now?
Yeah, I tell you what. So I'll share a story. I don't want to bore people, so I'll share a creative story. This thing is about thinking now. It's about
Yeah.
thinking, and I have students who I work with in small groups,
Hmm.
even as a principal, working in small groups, and I'm saying, hey, if Johnny walked to the store, right, and he had 5 popsicles, and a dog came and ate 5 of them, how many are left? Or how many could he sell to his friends? And our students are having to take those multi-step opportunities and formulate an answer. And that question is not for a fifth grader at this point, whether we can build up to multiplication and division to increase the rigor of that. But I tell you what, our kindergartners, our first graders are having to think around multi-step, questions, and that's a struggle. That's a struggle for some, especially the of our students um, who are not receiving early intervention. Like, I'll ask you a question, Ava, what was her preschool, her pre-kindergarten, environment like at 3, 4, and 5?
Well, so Ava started a little bit of daycare before COVID, right? And then after COVID, well, she started right before, so she only really went 3 months. And then of course we went through COVID is for that time period. And she missed out on going to pre-K because and it was a weird situation. We applied and then they said, well, she missed the deadline for to go to pre-K in school, but she's on the waiting list. And then all the options we have for pre-K, we just really didn't find one that we kind of liked because it was going to be like at a daycare. So she didn't really have that pre-K experience, and I feel like if she did, she probably would not have some of the struggles that she has now, for sure. Because at least she would have had a better foundation and they have that experience in like a school environment for sure.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of families that have access to opportunities, rigorous opportunities for students at 3, 4, and 5 years old. For me as an educator, I can tell you that both of my kids were in a structured program at 3.
Mhm.
And I think that is built on their skills that, when you talk about middle school, I was talking to some students the other day, their EOGs are coming, and that
Yeah.
directly affects their 6th grade placement in 6 or 6 plus math. And with my students having those structured programs at 3, 4, and 5, they were ready for kindergarten. The research says that by 3rd grade, you can really foretell a student's level of success by 3rd grade.
Right.
And so both of my children were ready for 6 plus math going into without question. Now, in my son has a gifted identification, my daughter does not. But I do think having those structured programs early, again, allows her to be able to, have to do a little bit more studying to understand the information. But those work skills, that work knowledge, that other skill some students may not have, I think they do have. And as a principal, it's hard for me to know that some students do not have access to those structured opportunities, those rigorous opportunities at 3, 4, and 5, and thus come into kindergarten really struggle. And those are the students when you talk about retention, or you talk about those students who may even qualify for special education as they go through the tiered process. It's really a direct reflection of did they have that structured, rigorous environments at 3, 4, and 5.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think anything you can do to help your kid, establish themselves at an early age, the better. Because it's like well, they're gonna spend their time on something, So just from our experience with Ava, and I mean, just from the reports we're getting, I mean, there's certain things she definitely has to work on, and I think it's just because also when I think about it, I'm like, man, that's stuff I did in second grade, almost first grade, and she's doing it in kindergarten. It's not like she's failing at it. She just needs to understand, especially with like the sounds, and that's one of the things that I tell my. So I'm Dominican, right? So I speak both English and Spanish. Spanish is my first language. English I learned when I came to the States. But I saw what it was for my sister and my brother to learn, to be forced to learn both at the same time. I just think it brings more challenges because it's like you get two different languages. It's English, almost nothing is sounds is spelled how it sounds. It's very There's a lot of rules, a lot of things that kind of you have to know. But in Spanish, it's like if you pronounce the word right, you can basically sound it out, and 9 times out of 10, you get it right. So, like, I get a lot of slack from my family about this, especially my mom and my sister. But they're like, "You need to teach them Spanish." I'm like, "Let's teach them English, include the Spanish, and once we get a firm understanding on English, then we'll work more on Spanish." And I just that's kind of how I'm approaching it. So I fear that some of that might be affecting Ava on how she is sounding stuff out because she also is learning it from both sides of the coin. You know what I mean? So Yeah.
I just wanna I would just like to say within it, we have a growing Latino population at our school.
Mhm.
We added Spanish this year. We
Right.
added Spa not only to build the vocabulary of our English speaking students of the Spanish vocabulary, but for our Spanish speaking to build vocabulary in English as again, we are providing that transitional education to students. And I tell you what, a lot of our Spanish speaking students, they are because they do have the skills in Spanish,
Mhm.
when they learn the language, their skills are exploding. Their ability once they grasp the language, because if they have those mathematical reading skills in Spanish, once
Mhm.
they learn the language, they're taking off.
Right.
Again, I still think it goes back because what I'm saying is right now within some of our subgroups, we're seeing some of our Spanish speaking, we call them multilingual learners, exceeding some of our other subgroups. Again, it's a matter of having that foundational skills in math, in reading, and it starts early. So I tell you, if you have it in Spanish and then you're just gonna learn and then you're gonna build the English language onto it, I've seen it. I've seen it being able to work. What I have not seen or where I've seen the difficulty is kids not having the background knowledge, not having the explicit teaching earlier that when they come in, whether they know English or not, if they come in, they're basically at the same level in some ways, a little bit more than that. But again, you can see them performing at the same level. So it's very interesting, a very interesting conversation that we could really look at data. And I think the data would really astonish some people right now, especially within certain subgroups. And what I mean by subgroups, usually those are breaking down by ethnicity.
Right. Right. So different communities, basically, and cultures and stuff, how they interact and stuff like that. Is that basically the same thing?
Yeah, to a certain extent, yeah.
So, in just your experiences in education and going through school, what would you say is the biggest change in school compared to when we were students?
I think the pressure.
Pressure.
I think the pressure. I mean, what I've seen is I guess, quote unquote, accountability that people wanna see. When we were in school, we didn't have letter grades. When we were in school, I don't really remember having to pass a test that your parents got a letter home saying you were at or below proficiency. I mean, this starts in kindergarten right now. Starts in kindergarten, and you begin to compare yourself, right? First is parents comparing their kids. Then when students are of the more knowledgeable level, they begin to compare themselves against others. Then see them with the pressure. Right now, when we talk about getting into the early colleges in
Mhm.
high school,
Yeah.
and the demand and the expectations around your grades to be able to enter some of those advanced programs. And then again, we're also competing against the world in our colleges right now. It's high pressure. So I think how students handle that, or how parents handle that, because in administration, you hear a lot from parents, and they're putting a lot of pressure, and they're handling it worse than the kids are.
Yeah.
So really, I don't remember that pressure growing up, applying for colleges, going to school.
Mhm.
A to B, it wasn't the end of the world. If you
Yeah.
didn't make 12 or 1300, it wasn't the end of the world. But, I think the pressure for students and also for parents at this point has definitely increased.
Wow. Yeah, that was just gonna be kind of my other question is like how I guess in your experience, how have your teachers that have been under your report, I guess direct report or tutelage or however. It's weird because I don't know how the structure of like a principal, because I know you run the school, right? And then all the teachers report to you. So I guess the teachers that are under your tutelage or care or employee or whatever word we want to use, like how have they have to strategize, including all this stuff?
Yeah,
Because you said it's pressure. Okay, so it's one thing that the kids have pressure, but you also have the teachers that probably have the pressure of also implementing all these curriculums. They have no control over it. They're told basically,
yeah.
hey, this is what we teach. And if the pressure keeps going up, like how do teachers mitigate all that as well? And with people that
So,
you've worked with.
yeah, so I'll just share a story with you. I had a new teacher coming in, and, you know they don't teach these things in school. I know our universities and colleges are doing a great job, but there's some things that are left out of the books. And you come in, you sit down with a beginning teacher, and you say, "Hey, this and this has to be done." The example would be tracking data, monitoring data, progress monitoring data. That's frequent checks on where students are going. And that new teacher, will tell you, wow, I'm actually trying to get home. I'm trying to get to an event. I'm trying to get to an activity. I'm trying to find balance within my life. And so I really think for definitely our young teachers and for those who continue in the profession 10, 15, 20, 30 years, they're really finding that balance around that you're collecting data, that you're providing instruction, that you're grading tests. We know about that. You always see the teacher at the games or the after activities grading papers and then being ready to present for the next day. So it's really that work life balance is something that many people that have been successful with, and that's why they stay within this profession that we all know does not pay us as much as it should, especially when we're building the leaders, right? We're building the leaders of the world. Um, and so the pay doesn't reflect that. But again, they found that balance. And then there's some with those pressures to push to, let's say that new teacher has 50% of her students on grade level at the middle of the year. By the end of the year, I'm pushing that new teacher and I'm saying, "Hey, you're going to have to do A, B, and A, B, C in order to let's get to 65, 70% of those students being at proficient." And these are the things that have to take place. So sometimes those are hard conversations to have, but you want to find balance. You got to be organized. You got to be highly structured in your approach. And I think that's the thing that we're stressing with people as they come into the profession today.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, no, I can imagine. I know just speaking with Ava's teacher now, and we've talked through some of these things, and I could see the pressure on her, and she's teaching kindergarten, so like I can only imagine, you know, fifth grade, sixth grade, high school, and the classes that I went through. I couldn't even imagine how those classes are taught today. So, but I know you said that the earlier that you can help your kids get into these different programs, if it's you just at home doing your best to get them a book or a preschool or whatever, right? That's the ideal situation because it helps them take those, especially if their birthday's late. Two of my kids, their birthdays after August, so they'll start school later. The baby, on the other hand, he'll actually start school right on time. His birthday's in April, which is interesting because I think between my two oldest, they'll be in school. They're 3 years apart, but then I think the middle and the youngest, at some point when they're both in school, they might only be 2 years apart, just because of how the age thing works. But what do you tell the parents, like, start right? This is what you should start doing right now to be helping your kids if they didn't have that afforded that ability to do those programs for their kids.
Yeah, so people might say it's not really this simple, but to be honest with you, what I tell parents right now is go to Dollar General. Maybe they'll make me a sponsor or something. Go to Dollar General, Dollar Tree, go to their curriculum section, get flashcards, get, you know, writing paper, sight word cards. All of these things are sitting right there at Dollar Tree and Dollar General, and
Hmm.
there, for $1.50 to grab them, start quizzing kids, working with them on their sight words. Again, these are many things that they're doing in kindergarten, but again, they're moving so fast, right? They're building on skills so quickly that some kids who don't have the time, it passes them up. And then what do you see? You see frustration, you see acting out. Mom doesn't know why there's the change. But again, who wants to be in class and not really understanding what's happening? I'm pretty sure it'd be pretty frustrating of us on our jobs too if our jobs are moving pretty fast and we just weren't able to keep up. So I really do. I really think it's that simple. There's a lot of resources right here, just right in our fingertips that we
Hmm.
can grab and work. And just like kids get tablet time, let's go ahead and get some of those instructional times for them, even if it's 30 minutes, it's the same time as that tablet time. I think it'll be beneficial as they get started. Also, I have to truly throw this plug in there. Facts, multiplication. I mean, I mean, I remember in school they drilling us down with knowing our multiplication facts. It is alarming sometimes. Doesn't you know, I've been the principal at 3 different schools now. I was an AP at other schools, and consistently what I see students is not being able to master addition and subtraction and not in their multiplication facts quickly, and to be able to, again, as they have multi-step problems, if you're counting on your fingers and that's the first step of the problem, you're going to run out of time when you got a 50, 60 question test.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's actually so little backstory of me. When I had to actually repeat the second grade because of my reading, because again, English is my second language. So when I got to second grade, it's funny, I can roll my tongue, but where I'm from in Dominican Republic, we we don't use ours. Like it's really weird. Just where we're from, that's just part of our dialect, I guess you could say. So I had to repeat second grade, but the second time around, I had a better experience, of course. Then I passed, went on graduate and everything after that. But I remember multiplications was like a hard thing to understand. But once I got it, just it was there. And I went from doing like little five question multiplication to then move over to doing 100, and it was a minute, and it was just like spitfire, pop, 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 and then they would mix up, and then it was like multiplication and division, and it was 100, and then math, and it was all four of them, all the four basic ones, addition, subtraction, multiplication, and it was just like it was just clicking. But yeah, no, that's really important, and it's just trying to find those. I guess for me, I always try to dumbify everything so I so I can understand it, and that's just how I am. Like I'll try to take something that may seem complex and just find the simplest explanation of how it works, and that's just work for me. But yeah, no, when you said multiplication, that reminded me of like, yeah, you're gonna have to understand these concepts because you look at it and you're like, it's not it's not as simple as addition, because you know 9 plus 9 is 18, but 9 times times 9 is not is it's 81.
And I'll actually relate this to sports. Not only do not see us really spending the time on multiplication, but I see kids at recess every day,
Mhm.
right? And it's that same level of discipline. I'll use dribbling the ball, dribbling the basketball. Like I see a lot of kids, even at 5th grade, they don't know how to dribble the basketball. We're still picking up the basketball and running around.
Yeah,
It's the same level of discipline and skill. Like, even though they watch the game and it's LeBron, it's Steph, it's, Anthony Edwards, they watch it on TV, but that same level of discipline to understand, you have to dribble the ball. You can't pick it up,
yeah, yeah.
run around with it and shoot.
The structure of it, you have to immerse yourself in the structure of how to do it.
There you go. Yep.
What do you say makes a student successful beyond the grades?
Determination,
Determination.
perseverance, grit. I'm gonna be honest with you, in all of our lives, right? Even as parents,
Hmm.
know this to be true. There's days we say, "Man, I might fail my kids. So I'm tired." And it's the grit, it's the determination that pushes us through. And for kids, it's the same thing. If they can quit and they're allowed to quit, they're gonna quit.
Yeah,
And for me, I spend a lot of my time speaking with students about just push through. It'll get easier. This is a life skill. And they don't know what that means at this point. They don't know that's a life skill, but we know what it means. It's you got to push through, buddy, because hard and difficult. Not saying there's no joy in it, because we've learned that as adults, there's even joy in some of the hard things that we're doing, because
a
we know
lot of
that we'll.
lessons. A lot of lessons are learned through the hard. Unfortunately, you have to go through the, and military. You used to say when you got to embrace the suck. So yeah, that's true. And I think the issue too is that we don't talk to kids enough about that. We talk to kids like they're kids, and sometimes you got to talk to a kid like they're that future adult, but at a level they can sort of comprehend it. Because I read this story one time, and I forgot what the kid asked the parent, but it was like it could have been something like, where do babies come from or something, right? That's a very complex question to ask and try to explain to a child. And the answer was the dad told the kid, "Do you see my bag over there? Bring me that bag." And the kid goes over there, grabs the bag, and tries to bring it. He's like, "No, I can't. It's too heavy." And then the dad was like, "Exactly. There's certain things that you just aren't meant to carry, aren't meant to carry right now. So, then when you get older, you'll be able to carry those things." So if I think that's how I approach my kids. Like when I explain something to them, it's not that I want to hide something, but I also don't want to give too much information to where I'm now making things worse. So, but I think shielding your kids to a certain extent isn't helping them, because you may think you're nurturing them by protecting them. But I forget who has a book called, I think it's called Soar. But basically in the book they talked about how an eagle will kick a baby out the nest to make it fly. So I think that's very important, because that's nurturing, because the eagle knows that if I don't kick my baby out the nest and they learn how to fly, they're not going to be able to take care of themselves. So I think it's having those conversations with kids, and, you know, within certain parameters, but understand, let them know that, hey, things are going to suck for a while, but the outcome of your the trial is worth it.
Yeah, I gotta go. I just gotta say, along with that, yeah, I totally agree, and that's the reason why we should really appreciate our teachers and our principals, our counselors. I mean, these people are with our kids sometimes more than we are. If we include, they go to sleep when they get home. We're with them, more than the parents are. So what we're saying, what we're doing, and trust me, I get it wrong. I get it right sometimes. I get it wrong sometimes
Mhm.
in this. I've lived and learned many times. I learned last week, to be honest with you. But one thing that I think as a society that we really have to change is our level of appreciation for teachers and counselors and principals. It has to step its game up. We're losing too many good teachers, so many good principals, so many good leaders because we're missing these opportunities to understand the power and the impact they're making on our kids. And then we're like, they're not really doing anything, or we don't really see that. I'm telling you what, I've only been in this game. I've been in 23 years, but the last 10 years, or even since COVID, I talk to you about the power teachers, the power counselors, the power principals that we are losing because we are not giving them. I'm not even talking about the pay at this point. I'm just talking about the appreciation, the gratitude, the understanding of what they're doing on a day-to-day basis for our students. Man, it's been hard seeing these great leaders leave, because what you're talking about is so very true, and everybody can do it. Everybody doesn't have a high level of discernment, be able to say the right thing at the right time.
Right, right. Yeah, we're all nobody's perfect, and even myself, I was actually having a conversation with Miss Williamson, and I didn't express my concern and frustration how I should have, and I took it and I was like, I didn't approach it properly, and I don't even know if you know that story, but we were having a conversation about something that Ava was supposed to do, and maybe I wasn't really. I knew after she explained it, and I knew what it was. It was more, I forget the word. It's just if you see seven dice, that's seven without counting. I forget what the term of that is called. I know it starts with an S. I have to look it up. But anyway, so once she explained it, it was one. I made a comment of like, it was an internal comment that I should just kept it internal, but I texted back and I said, "That's dumb." And then I told my wife that, and after a conversation, I was like, I apologized to her, and she was very graceful, and how she approached it was awesome, because she basically was like, "Hey, I send out a newsletter every week for a reason." And now I'm like, okay, I couldn't even respond. I was like, "Yep, I got it. I need to read the newsletter." Because that covers. If I would have took a second to read the newsletter, and she even says, like, she takes her time to do that. And like you said, we definitely don't give appreciation and respect. I think that's another thing that we need. We need to, just respect that position because you guys are with our kids. Actually, the reason that I currently work from home right now is so I can be more available for my kids. That's solely, I shouldn't say solely, but it was one of the leading factors why I made the transition. And it was a career transition. I was tech in the field. I've always been in the field, and I made a transition to work from home so I can take Ava to school. I can pick her up. Anything happens, you guys call. I'm there in literally 5 minutes. We live pretty close by. So that was one of the things, and I just think that um, taking that responsibility for your kids when they're wrong and not shielding them. Back to what we were talking about, the whole nurturing. You can't when your kid is wrong, just like when we're wrong, we should own up to it. And unfortunately, I had situations in school, and I was a kid that somebody actually did something to me, and the parent was like, "Well, what did your like this? I think this kid took my phone or whatever. He just got off the bus, yanked the phone out of my hand." And then when we did the right thing. We went to school, told the school and everything. They called the parent, and the parent was like, "Well, why did he have his phone out? Like, it's my fault that he took my phone." And but when you have situations like that, you're not teaching your kids respect. You're not teaching your kids appreciation. And everybody has a boiling point. And I think that's why you guys are probably losing so many great people is because if the community but that behind is not behind the school and behind the teachers. Now, hold the school accountable to the things that the school should be held accountable to. You know what I mean? If something's going on, like, okay, this is going on, but at
That's
the
correct.
same time, the school should hold us accountable too, and we should take a part. And I think that's just the differences between generations. My parents weren't heavily involved. I mean, if I had a question, it was like, hey, this math or whatever, and then my mom would give me a sack of beans, and she'd like count the beans, and then so it wasn't that she didn't help. It was just not in the forefront of her mind to like, hey, did you get your schoolwork done? Would you learn? What can I help you with? Like that foundation as a parent. I don't think that's something that's practiced. It wasn't. It wasn't trained. It wasn't shown to me. I will say, at least in my experience. But
No, I agree. I agree. Things have changed. Things
mhm,
have changed. You know what? And I think in a good way, I think that many of our families, and I'm not just speaking of just my school, but as I talk to principals or even at previous schools that I'm at, my parents are engaged. They're engaged in their children's learning. And again, they don't understand all of the new math, all of the new ways of solving problems. So at times it can be pretty frustrating around learning these things, but wanting to be a part of their child's education. I think I've seen just the overwhelming majority of families wanting to be a part of their students' life, and that's really refreshing, regardless of their abilities and levels. Just having that level of engagement
mhm,
and wanting to know what's going on in their in their children's career is very important because I would say with you, my mom worked a lot, my father worked a lot education. When I was in school, parents weren't up at the school. They really didn't know what we were working on. They just the report card when it came out, and if you brought home the desired scores, they were happy with you. All
yeah,
right, let's keep it going. Good job. Or you need to bring that up. I see parents engaged in what their children are learning, and they need it because things are more complex. I do think what students are learning in kindergarten is at a level higher than it was when we were in school years
yeah.
ago. And that's a change for some parents. That's a change for some parents. They're like, dang, they're learning that now? Yeah.
That's me. That's me about every other day.
And this G test, I'm telling you, we're getting ready for EOGs. And some of my teachers, we're pulling some of these practice questions, reading them. And we're like, I had a teacher come to me and say, hey, read this. Read this. Let me know if I'm reading this wrong because this test is saying this is the answer. And I'm saying this is the answer. I read that test myself and I said the same thing. That's the answer they want these kids to have because
Yeah.
this would be the answer also. And they're really asking them to really think, critically think. You can't just go into the paragraph and find the answer. The answer is not going to be right there. You better do some work on that math problem. we're talking about third grade. We're not talking about we're talking about third grade, and also they better be able to do it on the computer. You're not on those scratch. Yeah, you can use some scratch paper, but you're gonna look that answer up. You're gonna look back in the text on your computer to do it. It's really advanced, a lot more advanced than what we're used to.
I want to touch on that. So that situation you just talked about. So I mean, if you guys are dealing with that, how is, I guess, the curriculum or the county or whoever's responsible for developing that? Like, how is that? Like, what's the point? Is that just one of those? Because I've always heard there's tests out there that are more like just a dummy question to a certain extent. Like, it doesn't hold any value. It's just trying to see what people like the students want. Is it are those kind of those situations, or is that or what's the purpose? Because like I said, if the teacher and the principal are like, I don't know, how do you expect the kids to respond? Just in that for those kind of questions.
I'll tell you what, this is just my opinion, right?
Okay.
I'm gonna give my opinion. I think there's levels to everything.
Hmm.
And I think some questions, you know, can tell you who really know it, who have a true rich understanding of the concept, and who has a surface understanding of the contract of the context. I don't think it's more or less dummy questions as much as it's like, hey, who's the 1%? Who's the 5%? Who's the 10%? Who's the 20% that are able to get these? Who are the 30%? Who are the 40%? Again, because even when you look at my kids are about to start applying for colleges soon, right? Who are most of these colleges taking within these students' graduation classes? They're taking the 10%. They're taking the top 15%, taking the top. What about the other 80%? Right? So again, within everything, I think there's levels, just like riding on a plane. There you can sit in different parts of that plane,
Yep.
right? There's levels to it, and so for us, I think they really are purposeful. I think if you take that data and you crunch those numbers and you disaggregate that data, it gives you a true picture. Now, what do you want to see from that picture? I'm not sure. I think it's depending on who wants to see what within the data, but within those questions, who can answer those higher ordered questions, who cannot, what strategies they're using, and or if we give this, maybe there's an answer to the question, but even maybe let's see even if they get this second question instead of the right answer, but they give this up, are they closer to the answer?
Okay.
What is the level of thinking? Did they get one or two right, or did they totally miss both of those? You get a lot of data, and it just depends on who's using the data and how they want to use it. So I think everything is purposeful. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah.
Everything that's happening is very purposeful.
Okay. No, I was just wondering, like, because I mean, we just that I wanted to take a second to kind of touch on that because you said teacher brings this to your attention, and then like you guys kind of came to the same conclusion. So I just wanted to see what was that, and I do agree. I don't think they would have just throw that in there just because. I'm sure that the way of thinking, they're just trying to see like if somebody will come up to that same conclusion. So but yeah, no, that's I hopefully that information is being put to good use, and I hate for the students that stresses them out because I remember taking tests and I'm like, I don't know what this is, how do I go about doing this? So I'm sure it just maybe just before they start the the EOGs, just let them know, hey, if you run into some crazy stuff, don't freak out, mark it, move on, come back, because that's how I was kind of taught. When I started taking the EOGs when I was in elementary school, it was a if you run across a question that is just taking you a lot of time, just move on and then come back to it later. That way you kind of because you don't want to burn a lot of time on one question because then if you miss one, it's better for you to miss that one than miss 10 because you didn't, you killed your time. So
Yeah. No, you're right. You're right. I mean, taking a test. That's for a whole nother show. That's for a whole nother episode.
yeah, we'll make
But
this a series.
the strategies and the anxiety and other different components of taking a test. I mean, it's yeah, it's a story. It's a topic, that's for sure.
So we talked about success for kids from a young age and they getting that exposure, and we talked about what parents can do starting now, which doesn't, very very simplistic but very effective. Just basically being a part of the process, and then, because that also helps too with the kids, is being there for them. Even if you feel like you don't even are doing it, you're doing it right, just being with them and through it shows, it teaches your kid, and it shows them that you're there for them and that you're part of the process and they have support, and I think we should just do, definitely just doing that is a big thing. But what do you tell to the parents that are too hands-on or too, you know, overbearing with their kids?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, they need to ask their kids, are they? Right? Because some people don't even know that they're overbearing, right? And they're smothering their children. And, children and their confidence.
Mhm,
And their confidence. I mean, whether it's from the school or it's from the parent side, for me at the school, I have both ends of that. And it's important that our kids are confident in what they're doing. They might have struggles, but they can still be confident. Building that up and not stealing any of that confidence away, because 'cause they're gonna need it all as they navigate the processes of high school, college, or technical school, or, entrepreneurship
mhm,
within that, right? That belief, that confidence, that and then also to know that, "Hey, mom and dad have got my back," within
mhm.
that.
Yep.
So, again, they need you. You want the best for them, but having those conversations about how they need you to be a part of that, I think is very important. I mean, and even for me, I have 2 kids and they're both different. I'm pretty sure you could say the same thing. I mean, what needs is different from what the other needs,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So it's not a one size fits all model that's gonna work. Maybe some parents have that. It's very interesting. I like to see that, but, that's not my testimony around one size fits all, meaning that, and again, in different areas, whether it's academics, whether it's sports, whether it's relationships, whatever that might be, you need to have those conversations and take an approach based on information, right? Not just based on what we think or what we want.
And I also feel like that's really hard for a parent to do, I think. And the reason I say that is because, just the generations that, taught us, right? Sometimes a kid's opinion is just that, a kid's opinion, and or like just having that question and taking a step back and having some humility to say, "Hey, am I doing this right? Like, is it too much?" And be okay with the answer. Because what if the kid says yes, and then they're like, "Well, I'm just trying to," da, da, da," and then now you're making it worse. So, I think if parents are going to do that, which I definitely try to do that as much as possible, because I understand that sometimes, like, I'm not perfect. I'm not gonna get everything right. I'm gonna screw up plenty. So, like, I like to ask, like, "Hey, did you like this? Am I doing this okay? Am I doing this too much?" But that takes a level of, humility and putting your ego aside, because at the end of the day, that child is your responsibility, and, you want them to succeed. So, who better than to give you, a quick, test of seeing how well you're doing, but your kids, but you have to be willing to take that.
Yeah. I mean, I know parents have high expectations for their children.
Mhm.
Ultimately, they have goals for their children. Again, I just say give them input. That's all I could say, because I know. Also, you have kids who don't wanna do this, but then you push them to do it, and they become let's say, a doctor or lawyer, and, hey, they say, "Oh, thank you for pushing me," right?
Yeah.
So, my advice would just be, again, have their input in it. Again, don't lose them in the process.
Yeah.
Don't, because I do see that. I do see people losing them in the process. I have a kid in high school, and he comes home and tells me about some of his friends, and I'm just trying not to be what he's telling me other people are doing. Part of that is, pushing them to the point that they're confused, they're anxious, and upset. So,
Okay.
man, it's a work, right? All of
Yeah.
this is a work, and there's no perfect magical
Nope.
answer, around it. But one thing that I'll take away from things is I'm just trying to be more and more patient
Yeah.
around everything.
Yeah, patient and give that little bit of grace, get that, just, hey, even if they messed it up a few times, you know, sometimes, like you say, you need to push them for sure, but give them a little bit of grace, just because, I think
I mean, the truth of the matter is we need to give them grace because we need grace. We're just not perfect. I
yep,
mean, I just say that just coming from a week where I just really feel like, hey, I really wasn't perfect. I really would have made some different decisions and some things, when
yeah,
sometimes when you get busy, you
mhm,
know, Take that, and again, so just remember that if we're gonna need some of that, let's give some of that, let's dish some of that out.
Right.
Let's share some of that. Yep.
Yeah, this is good information. I think this is gonna help a lot of parents, because just the different perspectives. So this is good. But the last thing I wanted to talk about, because it's something that's been on my mind just the last few weeks, actually. So this is actually perfect. In your experience, do you think that kids retain more information on a traditional schedule or a year-round schedule like we are currently in? And the reason I want to ask the question is because I'm sitting there thinking, okay, they go to school 6, 9 weeks, whatever the number is. I think it's 9, but and then they go home for 3 weeks. You know, and I guess the expectation is that when they come back in 3 weeks, they're gonna remember what they did 3 weeks ago. We have grown adults that don't remember what they did yesterday. So, which do you think, if there's any data that shows otherwise, which one is more beneficial for a child, a traditional or a year?
Yeah, so that's a good question. And again, all this will be based on my opinion because I don't have any data to support it. Now you're coming from an administrator who has a lot of bias because I actually in 23 years, 20 of those years were from traditional school. 20.
Okay.
The last 3 years have been year round. And my 100% answer, because this is not even hard for me to answer this question, is it depends on the child. It depends on the child. I mean, I'm pretty sure there's data to say, hey, these students have excelled in year round, having less breaks. Because what I would say is that a mathematical concept, because like you said, some adults we can't remember from day to day. Or let's say we went to church today. Can we remember if someone asks you, hey, what was the message about today? You'd be like,
Yep.
I can't really. Okay. But I will also say there's some students who, again, will come in and say, yeah, I remember that concept that we talked about 3 weeks ago. And hey, let's go. Let's build on that. But then again, that same student, you take them and you give them 3 months off. 3 months off? I promise you, they're going to need some reteaching around that skill
Yeah, that's true.
in order to be able to. And then it'll start clicking. Okay. Now I remember it. Okay. Now, how many weeks have you lost reviewing it to catch them
Right.
up? On what they are, right? But let me throw another caveat in you, which really makes me say that it depends on the child. There are other students who they are so overwhelmed after 9 weeks of teaching, rigorous, and they need a break.
Yeah.
They literally need a break. They'll tell you, I can't wait for a break. I need a break right now, right? And when they leave and when they come back, they look prepared and ready to learn. Because I've also been in traditional school. And you and I both know there are some people when there is no break in there, they're acting up, they're cutting up, they're
Yeah,
not
no,
coming.
for sure.
They're saying, "Hey, I need a day at home today." And I can say this, I really feel like year round for a lot of students, I'm not sure of where the academics will say they are. Because some students who walk through the door are proficient in year round and to the day they take that test. There's some they walk in non-proficient and at the end of the year they're still not gonna be proficient, whether it's year round or traditional. So I really think because a well-rounded child, there's many facets. I think that a successful school depends on the child and what works for their needs best. Because I know there are kids that traditional is causing to them to excel based on those breaks, based on how learning happens within those times. And then I know other students because I know those parents, they're like, hey, I'm going to look for a traditional option. My student needs to be in school, dot, dot, dot. But you know what? Actually, I found out that's really not the case. A lot of parents really want traditional just because of their work schedules. They don't have a lot of
Yeah.
flexibility.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you took that out, right? If everything was equal, that it didn't matter your job, it didn't matter this, and you could be there to pick them up during year round. You could have them at home for 3 weeks, or you could have them at home for 3 months and then really track learning. That'd be an interesting case study if all things were equal, but they're not. And so I think, again, it makes things really invalid around the data because, again, if you are tracking that data, let's also impact what parents are able to do, what they're not able to do within those times, because those things are huge, right? Some of these kids are in track out camps during this time. Some of these kids have online learning that's taking place when they're tracked out. Some of these kids during the summer go to like 15 million camps at NC State, Duke, this, that. Then they come back and they say, oh, yeah, traditional works for me. Yeah, but you also was at every STEM and technology camp during the so you came back ready to go because you were using what you learned from the year before, whereas some were learning absolutely nothing, just play video games for 3 straight months.
Yeah. Yeah.
So again, it really needs to be a very controlled study to really get true and authentic data. Now, I know that now working in traditional and year round for both of them,
Mhm.
many people really have that background to be able to understand there's a lot of factors that impact not just the data at the end of the year.
Yeah. No, you definitely brought up a different perspective because again, yeah, if you go the entire, you know, August to June, and of course you have the winter break or spring break, so you'll get sort of a smaller break, maybe a week, week and a half, but then or like you have the teacher work days or whatever throughout the month and the holidays, but then you go home for 3 months and then you don't do anything and then you come back and then you got to take those few days to, hey, you remember when you did this last year? Well, this is the next step. You did multiplication. Oh, let's go and start adding exponents to it, and now, but you have to make sure they understand, multiplication, because if they don't remember that, how are they going to do exponents? So yeah, no, that's different. That's a different perspective. I didn't think of it from there, and I guess I was just coming from my experience, right, with my child. So, but you said it depends on the child. So, in your opinion, what should a parent be looking for? Is it like what they? I mean, well, I guess this just depends, like you said, on the child. But as a parent, what advice would you get them to mitigate? If we know that it depends on the kid and how they can navigate school, is it they need more breaks or they need less breaks? What would be a good advice for a parent that's trying to figure out, should I take them to traditional or should I take them to year round?
Yeah, I mean, for me, because I'm thinking of one student as you asked me that question right now. I always believe if something ain't work and try something else. If something ain't working, try something else. But I tell you what, in navigating life, right? I know that's a whole nother episode, but
Yeah,
life can have its challenges.
yeah,
And sometimes you just can't. I mean, I feel like I'm blessed. I feel like we're blessed that, hey, if we needed to do something that we could make work for our child. But I think many people feel like they can't do it. And if you feel like you can't do something and your child is not being successful, I'm not sure that's the right thing for your child. There's a lot of things. I mean, I'm not really sure. There's some people who have high level of faith. I think within some of the hard decisions that we have to make, you're going to have to jump out there on faith and be able to see successes for your child. And I think that's where I'll answer that question. If you're not seeing successes and we're doing the same exact thing, I don't think that's a recipe for getting where we want. And it's gonna have you challenge yourself to jump out where there's gonna be some faith that needs to happen for your child. But I can say that for my son who is autistic. There were some things that we went to his daycare and he was having many struggles. And thank goodness that we as a family said, we're gonna have to do something different today. And we had to pull him out that day and get him tested and get him into the right setting where that now people they don't even know. They have no earthly idea around that. But you have to most sometimes the right thing is not the easiest thing to do.
yeah,
I want to encourage parents that sometimes you got to take that risk. You got to take that leap of faith. You got to go out there because you can't continue to do the same thing and expect different results. It's just not going to happen. At least not at a high efficiency as we would want.
yeah. No, I agree because there aren't many members of my family that have autism. I do have two cousins. One of my cousins, her son that is autistic, when she started, and she's also a nurse now, so I guess maybe she had more of that knowledge to kind of spot things at an earlier age with Sair, and she just, I mean, they lived in Florida basically the entire time. Sair, they just moved back to North Carolina. Well, she moved back. He never lived here, but I mean, when she found out, she was like, every program, everything she can get her hands on that worked. I think just the daycare that he went to was, I don't forget if it was a bit of a drive or whatever the case might have been, but she jumped through those hoops. And now, you know, he's very high functioning. Like if you just see him and he's just doing his thing, you wouldn't really you really wouldn't know until you start talking to him. And they have certain mannerisms and stuff that you once you interact with him, you'll kind of pick up on it. But outside of that, I mean, he's very high functioning. He comes over here and we just hang out, and they don't understand sarcasm or jokes. And I forgot that. And I said a joke, and it was like a little silly, like dad joke. And he just looked at me like, what does that mean? And I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, duh, Luis. You got to remember that for them, it's just a little bit more of a challenge. So, like, you know, and like you just said, like you have to do those things for your kids. Because if your kids, let's just navigate down that route. It's not just the kid needs to adapt and change. Parents need to adapt and change. If your kid has struggles, you have to be in the struggle with him. And the reason I say that is because on the flip side, I have another cousin, had a baby is autistic, and she's not giving him any help whatsoever. I don't understand because there's a lot of resources that are available, but they're not. And then he's being raised by his grandparents, and they're from previous generations. And I can only speak to the Hispanic community, but they look at that as like he's crazy, and he's not crazy. He just has different challenges, and if they're gonna maintain and they're gonna be with him, they have to make changes also. But they don't. I don't know if they don't want to. It's just a challenge. Plus, they already raised 3 kids, and this is
Let me say this because again, I mean, I'm very fortunate being in education. Being around around autism and the diagnosis of autism and the supports around that. If I wasn't an educator, a lot of this is about information. How do you get this information? And I was in education at the point in which my child was diagnosed. So I'm in a minority of people who knew where to go, who to ask. I mean, I can also say that my wife is an attorney, and we had to use that card several times to get him the access
Mhm.
that he for things.
Yeah.
So I don't think that I think a lot of people want the best for their child,
I
but
agree.
information or the lack of how to get that information and what to do. I mean, it almost reminds me of the college scholarships. I'll use that as an example. College scholarships. I mean, there's a lot of scholarships out there, right?
Mhm.
But if you ask me and you right now, let's go find some scholarships to get for our kids. Where are we going? We don't know where to go to get that. I heard someone tell me the other day, your child can be in the ninth, 10th, and he, doesn't even have to be a senior and can get scholarships.
Yeah.
Like, what? Who? I didn't know that. And again, that's how some of our families are, whether it's their child being diagnosed with autism or their kid just not being high functioning, just not being on grade level,
Mhm.
or students with behavior concerns, behavior issues. They don't know where to go. Are we having, for lack of better words, are we having Super Bowl ads to tell families how to be informed to get this information? No, we're not.
Not $1 million a second. No, I don't think so.
No, we're not. You right? And so a lot of this, unfortunately, is a lack of information for our families, and especially our low social economic family. Ooh, don't even get me started on that, right? Like, they don't have the information to know what to do and not to do. They've always almost got their hands up, right? And again, I am a person who again is not in that minority because again, I was an educator. I have a wife that again can go in somewhere and say, "Hey, I'm an attorney. You know what? If we got to do what we got to do in order." I mean, how many people have that opportunity to be able to do that? So when you see my son, yeah, I'm not. I'm not going. I can't chastise anybody else because I was very fortunate. And so I mean, one of these days as if you get out of education, it would be great. I wish I could go around and tell people and have, a resource of people who come with me,
Mhm.
right? And travel from place to place to place to say, hey, these are the options, these are the resources. I bet you even members of your family would probably be there saying to themselves, wow, I wish I had this information sooner.
Yeah, yeah, no, and I don't, and I'm not saying like my aunt, because it's my aunt, that she is bad for how they're approaching it or anything like that. It's just, it's a challenge. I see her challenge, and unfortunately, I don't. They're at a point where they just don't know what to do, and it's affecting the baby. At the end of the day, the main focus is the child, and what's better for them, because the kid didn't ask to be here, you know.
Yeah.
So like they have
Every day.
that have a sheer responsibility, and unfortunately, it falls on them more than the mom, just because the mom, she's where she's at in life, might not be able to help as much, but and it's tough, but I do agree. Like if you have that information available to you, and that definitely is a plus. But what do you think people, even though they don't have the information, what prevents them from finding the information? Is it just that they don't know where to go, or they just don't want to seem dumb by asking? Because I know I'm the kind of person where I'll ask you a question. I'll ask it 3, 4 times if I have to, because I have to understand it for me. But what do you think what challenges are those for those parents that
It's definitely a combination. It's definitely a combination, and I'll just start with the latter. I mean, yeah, part of pride can be a part of it. Pride can be a part of it, and I'll speak to that for myself. When we started seeing some things that were different, yeah, we were very prideful and wanted to throw it under the rug. To no, it's just maturity. Just needs to be more maturity, and things will improve, right? So
Yep.
I definitely think that's the case. But I also know the other combination. Again, it depends on the family
Mhm.
because access. Think about it. We're having a good conversation, but there's going to be many people who never see this podcast, right? Like who never see this podcast, or I'll take it a step further. We also have people in our government who have the opportunity to help and provide access and avenues, and that could and have more media networks and power to do that. Now, are they going to do it? Are they going to do it? But they have more access than me and you do to be able to provide supports around that and put people in place who are really focused and determined to get the job done, regardless of the politics, to get the job done. Question is, are we gonna do it? So there's a lot of factors. There's enough ownership and accountability
Mhm.
to go around to everyone, with that. But I will also say this: how we're using our money, because I think that's a big conversation in our country today. How we're using our money, you know, I think and I hope that one day everyone will have access to these resources and opportunities because some do. I'm gonna tell you right now, there's some do.
Oh
They're
yeah.
right. They got their kids in the best schools. They're getting their kids. Their kids are engineers. My wife worked for a law school, one particular law school that she worked for. And again, students, regardless of their disability, have skills to be able to come into these interviews and get jobs. And again, that's because of the work that was done years ago to have them ready to go into these to the real.
Oh yeah. And then you reap what you sow, right? So if you're sowing these good seeds in your kid's future, it's a struggle sometimes, especially if you're trying to get them in a certain school. It might be that's a drive, or the money aspect, or whatever the case may be. I think everything's a struggle. Everything's a trial for a certain extent, but the crop that you're gonna yield from those seeds, it's gonna be the purpose of why you go through it. So no, I agree, but that definitely appreciate. That question kind of came to me because I think a lot of this is there's definitely challenges. I'm not gonna pretend like there isn't, because there's challenges in everything. But I think as long as we're trying to be as accountable as possible and are seeking to help, and putting our pride aside, that's what's gonna that's a key factor to success in those different kind of situations.
Yeah, and I'll add courage. You gotta
Courage,
have
yeah.
courage. around this because again, I think, for me, I would have quit a long time ago if I didn't have the courage to continue,
Yeah.
with work. There's positive and negatives to everything.
Mhm.
And you know that in your career and all of our careers. But we gotta be courageous in this fight for what we do. And you see those who are. They overcome and they get some of the results they want. So there's for all of us, we have to pull that courageousness that lives on the inside of us. We got to pull that out and we got to bring it to the forefront in what we do. If we do that, regardless if we fail or succeed, we pulled it out of us and we tried. And I think we need more people to do that.
Yeah. No, this has been great. From just talking about what we could do from an early age, different aspects or different things we can put our kids in, to just rolling up the sleeves, to getting the old flashcards out and changing with the times too. Because I think that's another thing, is changing with the times. Because sometimes we get stuck in the how things were, and we have to, you know, some things when they change, especially for something like this, we're talking about the differences of like then and now. If for education, like, you have to make those changes and be willing to change, and be, put that pride aside and be willing to learn the stuff too, right? Because again, things are different from when I was going to school. Words and things are called differently, so now I have to learn that as well. So it's not just the kids that are learning, but it's also us, and we have to,
Yeah.
because even though at the end of the day, right, our kids' output and tests and schoolwork and stuff, their responsibility. But if we don't help them succeed, like, we also let them fail too. So, but yeah, and just your insight on the traditional and versus the year round. I didn't even think about that. I was, oh man, 3 weeks break, that might be a lot of time, but what about a 2.5 month break that between the summertime? I didn't even think about that. So I definitely want to appreciate your perspective on that, because that, like I said, that's not my situation. So I guess I didn't really look at it, but
Think of like, for example, like if you went from pre-calculus to calculus, I'd rather a 3-week break from even though traditionally in high schools here, there's no year-round high schools. So I guess that's that example. But even if you go from math 1 in middle school to math 2, I'd rather a 3-week break going from math 1 to math 2 than a 2.5 month break between math 1 and math 2. I think there's a better connection with that shorter break. So, but
yeah,
again, it depends on the child.
yeah,
I want to go back
depends on the
to that.
child.
It depends on the child. Children are different.
Yeah, well, just want to get I guess some closing thoughts from you, Mr. Taylor. What advice you can give to, you know parents currently have kids in school? Well, I mean, I guess right now you're in elementary school, so maybe just speak to the elementary
Well,
school.
I actually came from high school and middle school, and I
Okay.
thought I'd always be in middle school. I thought I'd always be in middle school. But, there's one thing about elementary. When you get hugs and you can be a hero, okay, there's just something about that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think I'm ready to give that up just yet.
Yeah.
You know what? On this journey, I'm an educator and I'm on a journey myself
Mhm.
with finding the right schools for my kids. I mean, being in the right everybody wants the right teacher for their children,
Right.
teachers for their right?
Yeah, we have a history.
I mean,
Oh yeah,
night and day, right? It's night and day.
night and day. Yes, sir.
Find that. But, sometimes you will, sometimes you won't. It builds resilience, within your kids. But I want to encourage what I want to encourage families is that this is a journey. This is a journey getting your kids, I mean, through school. And every year that you do, you should be excited about that. At the end of it, you say, hey, you start kindergarten, it was a success. First grade, it was a second grade. You want to continue to, hey, my son, hey, he had a tough class in the first semester. We got through it, right?
Yeah.
Let's move forward into this second semester and finish up strong our sophomore year around that. You know what? Get in there, get involved with the teachers. You all know that. You know that. Get in there with involved with the teachers. I promise you, you get involved with the teachers. You know your children's teacher. You ask them how you can help and support, right? Like anything else, I'm telling you, it's going to make it better. Be involved in your child's school, right? Be on the PTA. see where you can help and support. Principal knows you, teachers know you, you know, it's something in which they're going to look out for your children. That's just the way of the world. That's just the way of the world. They're going to look out for your children. Get involved. I promise you, if you get involved, it's going to make it that much easier as your child journeys through the schooling process.
You talked about the leaders and teachers that unfortunately are stepping away from education. What would be your message to the current ones or even the ones that have left? Like, what would you, just some parting words for them, some advice to keep the fire burning to a certain extent?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, the kids need you. The kids, everybody that walked away, the kids need everybody to come back. I'm just gonna the kids. It's
Yeah.
about as long as it's about the kids,
Mhm.
and I'll say this, and they'll look at this and they'll say, but he needs to be realistic that I need to be able to take care of my family.
That's true.
And I'm gonna tell them I completely understand that. I am hoping and praying every day that somebody makes a way that financial being able to take care of your family is not a reason why people are walking away from education. We're building the leaders of our country, of the world. We're building leaders of the world, and so I don't have a solution to that, but I will say these kids need you. Everybody that walked away, they need you. I mean, there's a need every day for better teachers, for better counselors, for better principals. And the kids are going to give the love back to you. That's the thing, that kids are ready to love their, the people that they're at school with 7 and 8 hours a day. They're ready to do it. In their way, don't get me wrong, it doesn't look the same way. Their love doesn't look the same way. But then they'll come back 10 years later and say, you were the reason why I am who I am today. I've been in this long enough. They've graduated from, they're coming back and telling me, and it's priceless with that. So I hope that they'll come back, but I also hope that one day we can also support educators with being able to take care of their families. They should go hand in hand.
Okay. Yeah. You talked about resources and you talked about just, finding that information just off the head. I know I probably didn't prep you for this, but what are some resources that, that our county, because we all, you work within our current county, that maybe they didn't even know existed, that are resources that we could take advantage of. You probably teach me one that I could take advantage of it. So.
I'm gonna make this one easy. I'm gonna make this one easy. It's all about going to the website.
Hmm.
Everything, because we work in Wake County Public Schools,
Hmm.
and Wake County Public Schools has an amazing website full of resources. You go on, you're gonna find the curriculum. You're gonna find curricular activities for
Hmm.
students to do, assignments for students to complete. You're gonna find helpful tools and hints around supporting strategies for help students solve problems. So for us, it's navigating our website. You can just go to wcpss.net and be able to find that information there. For other districts, I'm hoping that other districts are providing these opportunities and resources to their families on the website. Just there needs to be one single place they can go on, they can click resources to be able to pull and help students around the learning in their school district. I think that's the easiest way. Everyone can navigate a website at this point.
Yeah.
Being able to make it easy and accessible for families to go on, break it down by grade levels, break it down by classes, break it down by standards. Educators know what I'm talking about when I say standards, for families to be able to go on there because they do want to know. And I think just having a website similar to ours that has a bank of information and telling them, hey, go to the website, click here, here, and here, and it'll take you to our bank of resources. So I think that Wake County is definitely a front runner in that. And we're one of the biggest districts in Wake County, if not I think we might be the biggest in North Carolina. So again, around that, but states and districts can steal that, and I think families would be very happy with being able to have it right there on the website, on the district website.
I mean, if it's out there, right, it's just about looking for it and just knowing it's there too. That's why I wanted to ask the question, because every time I've gone to the Wake County Schools website and even our school's website, a lot of information. So I can definitely attest that he's not making this up. There's plenty of information. I mean, from having next year's calendar already available to you. I mean, you don't even have to print it out. You can download it straight to your phone. It'll sync to your calendar. It'll put when the kids are in school, when they're not in school, holidays, all that. It'll do it all for you. So that's another big resource that I find really awesome because instead of me going in there and putting from this week to this week, they're in school. It do it all for you. So yeah. Well, Mr. Taylor, I want to thank you for your insight, for your advice, your experience over the last 20+ years as an educator. I think this is going to be a big blessing. It's going to bring a lot of information and different avenues for parents. Navigating this ever changing education system from taking naps to no more taking naps in kindergarten to, getting ready for an EOG and then high school EOCs. So it's gonna be good.
Yeah, you got that. Yeah, they got to cut them naps out at 3, right? Like no naps at 4 years old. Like let's
Yeah,
get them ready.
yeah.
It's so many simple things. You're so right. Like so yeah, I'm glad to have the opportunity to be a part to share information with families, and I encourage them to ask their principals or their leaders, questions like this that can help them prepare early. So,
Well, I think I've got everything I needed. I think it's been great, everybody. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you on the next episode.
all right.